Welcome to the Parenting Lab podcast. I'm your parent coach, Brittany, and I am here to guide you into the calm, clarity, and connection you're looking for as you transform your parenting from the inside out. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Parenting Lab. I'm so glad you're here. Today we're talking about something that I believe lies at the heart of every healthy relationship, especially the one we have with our kids. I'm giving you a crash course in conversations. Why, you ask? Well, because while you certainly engage in conversations all the time with your kids, your partner, and others, we really need to talk about having empowered conversations because it's so easy to just talk without moving forward or gaining understanding or even really connecting. So we're going to learn the basics of empowered conversations, what they are, what blocks us from having them, and how we can start having more of them with our kids, our partners, and even ourselves. This is a skill I wish I had learned a lot earlier in my parenting journey because for so long, I genuinely thought I was communicating. I was talking, I was explaining, I was teaching, but I wasn't really connecting. And over time, I began to see the cost of that disconnection. Tantrums that weren't about the toys, silent car rides with my teens, resentment building underneath "I'm fine." Sound familiar? But it didn't stop there. With adults, including my husband, I would over-explain. I felt the constant need to defend myself and my opinions. And more often than not, I just wouldn't communicate at all. I would avoid hard conversations, internalize and bottle up my feelings, and get really, really quiet. Thank you, avoidant attachment. I was not communicating well, and my relationships were suffering. So when I learned that there's a better way to have a conversation, I immediately got to work and began practicing it in my daily life. And so today, I want to help you have better conversations, empowered conversations that shift away from communication that simply transfers information and towards communication that actually transforms relationships. Let's explore what that means. First of all, what are empowered conversations? Let's start with what they are not. So one of the best ways to visualize this type of conversation is to imagine a seesaw, or I'm going to call it a teeter-totter because that's what they call them where I'm from. So it's a teeter-totter. But if you can picture it, imagine that the teeter-totter is down on just one side, right? When it's down on this one side, we're going to call that power over communication. So I'm going to be discussing power dynamics. I discuss this a lot in Lab 2, which is available on my website, which is all about parenting patterns. But essentially, there are 3 power balances. There's power over, power under, and power with. So we'll get into that. There's a lot to explore, but we're going to use this same framework to understand conversations, okay? So the teeter-totter is all the way to one side, and that is power over communication. This is the type of conversation that is dominated by shame, blame, criticism, judgment, and comparison to others. In the power over dynamic, one person is trying to control the narrative. There's often yelling, sarcasm, insults, interruption, and emotional shutdown. You can probably conjure up some memories of power over conversations that you've had in your life, maybe even recent ones. If you can, really think about how that conversation felt. Maybe you're the aggressor in the situation you're thinking of, or maybe you were on the receiving end of it. It probably wasn't a positive interaction either way. Now imagine that the teeter-totter swings over to the other side, and now the opposite is happening. We call this power under communication. In this type of conversation, one person is the martyr. They're blaming themselves, shaming themselves, comparing themselves to others, using self-deprecating language, or even going silent, giving up, giving in. It's the proverbial hands up, I surrender, do whatever you want, I am shutting down mentality. Empowered conversations now are the teeter-totter when it's balanced, straight across the middle. No one is carrying the weight alone, and no one has more or less power. It's the power with dynamic. And this is where conversations get really, really good. Empowered conversations are built on honesty, compassion, and clarity. They allow every person involved to express themselves authentically while also feeling deeply heard and deeply understood. And that is rare because most of us grew up learning how to communicate through correction, command, coercion, and control. That power over dynamic, right? We learn to silence our feelings or bottle them up, especially those big ones, anger, sadness, frustration, because those big feelings made the adults around us uncomfortable. Or we learn to keep our words to ourselves because no one was really listening anyway. Now, as adults and as parents, maybe we struggle to find our voice, or maybe we constantly feel like we're on the defensive or afraid of power over communication, so we retreat into power under tactics to protect ourselves. An empowered conversation in that power with dynamic says, "You matter. Your voice matters, and I want to understand what's really going on beneath the surface." So, why is this so hard? Let's talk about a few of the big things that tend to get in our way. First, our beliefs about feelings. We often carry unconscious beliefs like crying is weak and anger is bad, or good parents stay calm all the time. These beliefs stop us from expressing our feelings and from allowing our children to express theirs. But feelings aren't problems. They're messengers. I'm going to say that again because it's important. Feelings aren't problems. They're messengers. They're trying to tell us something. In the book Nonviolent Communication, Marshall Rosenberg, the author, reminds us that feelings are signals that our needs are either being met or they're not. When we suppress our feelings, we miss out on what those signals are trying to tell us. Another reason power with conversations are hard is that we were probably never modeled how to have empowered conversations. Think about how often you were really listened to as a child. How often someone said, "Wow, that sounds hard. Tell me more about that." Probably not often. Most of us were taught to obey, to be quiet, or to perform. So if we never had the experience of being deeply heard, it can feel really foreign or even threatening to offer that kind of space to our kids. We may feel exposed, vulnerable, or like we're losing authority. This is a big one I see with parents I work with. They're afraid of losing credibility, but in reality, we're not losing anything. We're gaining trust. We also need to talk about how we tend to want to listen to fix, not to hear. One of the most common patterns I see in parenting, and honestly, I'm guilty of this too, is jumping in to fix or offer solutions or critique. Imagine your kid says something like, "Oh, no one played with me at recess." And before they're even finished telling you what happened, we're already responding, "Well, did you try talking to someone else? Maybe tomorrow will be better." It comes from love, yes, but it also shuts the door on their feelings. Sometimes kids don't want advice. They want presence. They just want to feel safe being human and sad that they were alone. This is where that mantra comes in from episode 7, don't just do something, stand there. So here's why empowered communication matters. At the heart of it, communication is the foundation of connection. When our kids know they can come to us with anything without being fearful of judgment or being shamed or corrected or dismissed, they grow into people who know how to speak up for their needs and listen to the needs of others. They become resilient, compassionate, and emotionally intelligent. And as parents, we become more grounded and confident and connected. But when we don't create this kind of communication environment, this is what happens. Kids stop sharing. They act out to get attention. They internalize their feelings and believe their emotions are a burden. Empowered communication isn't just a nice thing to have. It is essential for raising kids who are secure in who they are. So, what can we do? Now that we know the what and the why, let's get into the how. I have a few strategies that can help you start to have more empowered conversations. All of these are inspired by Nonviolent Communication, the book I mentioned before by Marshall Rosenberg, and also my own parenting and coaching experiences. This is a very basic blueprint for power with communication. It's not a deep dive. Remember, this is a crash course. But as you listen to these ideas, I really want you to sort of audit your conversations and see if there are places that you can start to change how you talk, not to your kids, but with your kids. Okay? All right, first, start with an observation, not a judgment. When we lead with a judgment, like you're being disrespectful or stop overreacting, kids can feel attacked. Instead, start with a neutral observation. Instead of, oh, you're being rude, try saying something like, hey, I heard you raise your voice when I asked you to turn off the TV. This keeps the conversation grounded in reality, not in blame. Number 2, name the feeling. When we give language to emotions, we give our kids the tools to understand themselves. You can say, I wonder if you're feeling frustrated because you really wanted to keep playing. Or, I'm feeling overwhelmed right now because I need it to be a little bit quiet. Even if they don't have the words, we can help them build that emotional vocabulary over time. Third, identify the need behind the feeling. In nonviolent communication, every feeling points to a need. Anger might point to a need for fairness. Sadness might point to a need for connection. Teaching our kids and ourselves to uncover the need behind the emotion is a game changer. Try asking things like, what do you think you were needing in that moment? Or were you hoping for more attention from me? This shifts the focus from bad behavior to unmet needs, and that is where real healing happens. Fourth, make clear, kind requests. Instead of vague complaints or harsh commands, try specific, compassionate requests. Don't say, why can't you ever clean up your mess? Try this instead. Hey, would you be willing to help me clean up before dinner so that we can have more time together later? Demands create resistance, but requests invite cooperation. And last, number 5, hold space without fixing. Sometimes the very best thing you can say is, I'm here, I'm listening. Your child says, I hate school. And instead of responding, no, you don't, school's important, try saying things like, hey, sounds like something happened that made you feel really upset about school today. Do you want to tell me more? If they want to share, let your child lead. Let them vent, cry, stumble through their feelings. If they're not ready, tell them you're ready to listen whenever they are, and you'll check in with them later. Remember, your job is to be a container to hold all of that, not a corrector to fix it. Empowered communication is definitely not about getting it perfect. It's about showing up with presence, empathy, authenticity, and most of all, with space. It's okay if you mess up. Believe me, I mess up all the time. The key is repair. Using those magic words, hey, I did not listen to you the way I wanted to earlier. I'm sorry, I really do want to understand you. Every time we choose connection over correction, we build a bridge. And that bridge becomes the path our kids walk back to us again and again and again. Now, I know that we really geared this conversation about conversations towards our own kids, but I do think that it's worth acknowledging that conversations can also be challenging with your parents and other adults that you have relationships with. It can be incredibly difficult to have a power with conversation with your parents, especially if you're trying to address childhood wounds or trauma, or to get your parents to hear your point of view. There are generational patterns at play in these situations. So if you find yourself trying to have a constructive talk with your parents and they get defensive, angry, belligerent, and in any other way revert to those power over or power under dynamics, please remember that these patterns run very deep and likely they won't be receptive to change right away, or maybe even ever. But you do not need their understanding or their approval to heal, change, and create new patterns for yourself and for your family. So keep trying. Hold on to that power with perspective, and really imagine yourself responding to them in the same way that you do to your children, by saying, either with words or with actions, "Hey, you matter. Your voice matters, and I want to understand what's really going on beneath the surface." Lead by example. Avoid engaging in the habits of unhealthy communication. Guys, this takes practice. Oh man, does this take practice. But I promise you that when you start having these amazing, productive, engaging conversations with your kids and others, it will change your relationships in the most profound and beautiful ways. Thank you so much for joining me today. I know this topic is big, and I know we've just barely scratched the surface. If this episode resonated with you, please screenshot it, share it with your parents in your circle, or tag me on social media. I would love to hear your thoughts and experiences with empowered conversations. And if you're looking for more on this, I do highly recommend checking out that book, Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. It really is a blueprint for how to connect with your kids. I'm going to leave a link to that, and also to Lab 2, Finding Patterns in Parenting, if you're wanting to learn more about the power dynamics that we talked about today. So I'll link to that as well. Until next time, I just want you to remember that the way we talk to our kids becomes the way they talk to themselves. So let's make those conversations really count. I will talk to you again next week as we continue to explore the art and science of parenting and put your parenting to the test. Have an amazing week.
Thank you for listening to the Parenting Lab podcast. For our complete catalog of online courses, free resources, or to join our mailing list, please visit theparentinglab.org. See you next time.